Hmm. Da, da, da. Testing, testing. Yes. Just testing, trying to see if my mic situation works. Can you hear me all right? Oh, sweet. Excellent. Yeah, so we're using Soundtrack by Twitch for the music so that I don't do illegal copyright infringement things. It said in the, like, instructions that it would, like, separate out the track and, like, make it not appear in the recording, but it was totally there in the recording, so I don't know what they're talking about. But as long as it doesn't flag YouTube a bunch and Twitch, then it's fine. So I have my Murakumo that I started last time. I was thinking about doing that, but I also kind of like... Also sounds appealing to just do some sketches. And I need to do this little... I really need to finish this nonsense for my husband, who really wants Damien Swoolly for his Twitch icon as well. But I think he wants, like, the whole guy, so I gotta make it, like, really readable from a distance, you know, to make an icon. And I really don't know what I'm doing with this software yet, but I feel like last time I really liked the colored pencil tool, so maybe I'll start there. I am very happy with these legs, honestly. But I thought maybe we'd make him like a little more finished if possible. A little bit of polish on those little spindly gams. I don't know, maybe paint is better for this. If you're like a what is this software called? Clip Studio, that's what it's called. If you're a Clip Studio expert and you know how all this crap works, please tell me, because I have no idea what I'm doing. Really understand these brushes. This one just says oil paint, but it's like a plain old round brush with 0 features, so not really sure what about this is oil paint. But then again, they are default brushes, so it's kind of a I don't know what I expected type situation. But, you know, you can't go too far wrong with just, like, establishing silhouette first. So, why not? Been working on those donut cats I posted a little whip of this morning. But that's on the iPad, and last time it worked okay, but the Streamlabs app on iOS is like pretty unreliable, I found, unfortunately. At least for whatever reason with my exact setup and my internet and everything, like Just like some nights it crashes so much I just can't even use it, so decided to just stick with ye old faithful PC desktop OBS Labs, OBS Studio? OBS Studio. And keep forcing myself to learn Clip Studio because it's something I want to be fluent in. But you gotta spend the time, so making my stream time also my Clip Studio time. Oh, hi Tay! I am delighted that you're happy to see him. Damien Swoolly is, you know, makes everyone's day brighter, I feel. I'm making a Damien Swoolly icon for my husband because he wants to have him be his Twitch stream icon as well. So that's what we're doing. Just trying to make like one that will be like his whole self flexing and be somewhat visible from a distance. Yes, one by one, we'll just take over Twitch until they're all woolies. No one will mind, right? All those gamers will be fine with it. We'll just introduce it like a, I don't know, a virus, a woolly virus, swoolly virus. You're darn right it's not a bad idea. It would actually be hilarious. I don't know if there's enough of us to like be noticed by the Twitch community at large, but it would be absolutely hilarious to just have a bunch of people change their icon to Damien Swoolly, but nobody explains it. It is the best idea. I'm liking it. Yeah, I was just talking to my friend Jinjo, is what she goes by online, so if you're in my Discord and you've seen Jinjo in there, that's who I'm talking about. And she was telling me, was encouraging me to do more in the way of just like silly, goofy stuff. And I was talking about, like, I retweeted my Flane holding up a giant fish picture earlier today. And, like, that's one of my, like, most liked and retweeted and, like, commented on pictures. And it's just, like, this extremely dorky thing. So, definitely feeling like maybe I should do more, like, dumb, silly, meme-y stuff. Just meme it up. And I feel like Damien Swoolly is prime meme material. Yeah, and it's not that I'm like specifically being like, oh, I'm going out of my way to try and make something that will go viral. I mean, it's always nice to like see something get traction, of course, but more like just like I need to figure out a way to do some art that does not like completely destroy me every time. Like I have this reflexive desire to just like render absolutely everything and like make it super detailed and like really get like dig deep into the lighting and the brushwork and everything like that, which is awesome, but maybe I shouldn't be doing it like virtually every time because it's so much work. And like, you know, people consume content like so rapidly and there's like so much content out there, and like I'm still kind of trying to like get some kind of visibility increase on social media, which is really challenging when you're still a small account. So and I would like to be able to do more requests per month, you know, like I'm only really able to do a few each month for Patreon because they tend to be like really developed images. But if I were to figure out how to do, I mean, not necessarily always just really goofy shit like this, but if I were able to do like a style of image that is quicker to make, but still really satisfying and like giving attention to these characters that people are wanting to see, then I think that would be like a pretty good use of time. Jinjo, you're here! I was just talking about you. I was just talking about how we were saying earlier today that I need to make more goofy, silly stuff. And so here we are. This is gonna be Corey's new Twitch icon, my husband. Yeah, Tay, I agree. Like, expending, like, all my creative energy for the week on one specific image, like, I think that's good sometimes. But again, like, I think I just do that way too much. And, yeah, forcing myself to just chill a bit more and not be quite so, like, pedal to the metal at all times would probably be good for my mental health as well. Oh, you know what? Here it is. Here's the oil paint features. It's when you start painting with a different color on top, that's when you start to get it. Oh yeah, I could see how this would be a good thing. Cool, 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 cool. All right, well, we'll get more into that feature in a moment here once I have more colors laid down. I like that. That's really nice. It's got like a little smearing effect, but it's still really smooth. Like you kind of expect this sort of out of the can digital feel. Like a lot of people sort of like poo-poo it a little bit. You know, like there's like a strong desire to have these super like photo sourced natural brushes, and those are great. And I use a lot of them. Like Max Use brush packs. I have all of them. I have all of them. I bought them all because I love them so much, and I use quite a lot of them, surprisingly. You know how it is usually, you just buy a bunch of brushes and then forget you have them. But I use a lot of my Max brushes, and they're wonderful. But I do really like the smooth digital look too. Like, I still am enchanted by that, despite, like, you know, the sort of kind of cheesiness of it, I guess. Okay. It's like Jinjo doesn't have volume on, so I'm gonna type her a quick message. That's why I'm gonna just pause talking for a minute. Cool. Yeah, so I'm actually pretty excited that this weird little default oil brush doesn't have texture in it. I really like this sort of smeary thing it's doing with the color, but without any textury stuff happening. That's nice. I could get used to that. I mean, like, I've also heard people say that, like, to them, Clip Studio has the most natural feel, which is fascinating to me because I feel like, you know, Procreate has a really strong that way, the feel of the brushes, when you have, like, a paper, like, screen protector and you're using the Apple Pencil, which is a pretty darn good product. You know what, I'm just realizing I never draw the inside of the Woolly's ears, so I don't know why I'm doing that right there. Probably just because I want to smear more pink around. I'm just gonna undo that. But yeah, I'm still like very like wowed by all the amazing art that people are doing in Clip Studio. So like, you know, clearly this software has like a ton going for it, and that's why I really didn't hesitate when it went on sale. I was like, yeah, okay, I'll do that. You know, it's like one-time purchase on the desktop instead of a subscription plan, which is always really nice, and super reasonable price for like quite a fully featured software. So even though I don't know what I'm doing yet, I'm already happy with my purchase. If anybody is a user of Clip Studio and you would like to tell me about your favorite brushes and where I can find them to download or purchase, please do. I need all the leads, all the tips. I'm just going to be kind of dinking around with like default brushes for a little while I get used to the software, but I will be looking for more tool sets to kind of explore. Like, you'll find this messaging everywhere, and that's important because it is true. Like that, you know, brushes are not going to make you a better artist, so that they're no replacement for like art fundamentals. That's all true. But what is also true about brushes is good materials. So like, aside from digital, let's talk about it in terms of traditional. Good materials remove obstacles. So while good paint isn't going to make your art fundamentals better without the learning, you know, you've got to learn art, not just paint. It will make it easier for you, a more fun experience. It will kind of like get weird obstacles like inconsistent pigment or like unexpected behavior totally out of your way. So brushes do matter, because when they feel good to use, you're definitely gonna enjoy your process better and maybe make faster progress. So Canvas says, I use GIMP on a Microsoft Surface Pro for like straight drawing and MS Paint for sprites. Cool. Yeah. So like pixel art sprites. Planning to look into Fire Alpaca though. Comes with comic templates, which appeals to me. Yeah, that was a big reason why I was excited about Clip too, is the idea of having the comic tools. Because I'd like to do comics, but I also don't know what I'm doing in terms of comics, and I know that hand drawing them in Procreate is extremely time consuming, so using some of the time-saving tools definitely appeals to me. And I've definitely heard good things about Fire Alpaca too, so I think there's it's a rising, right? There's like more and more good software as alternatives to Adobe, which is great. I kind of griped about it a bunch in a previous stream, but like I just don't like the feeling of painting in Photoshop. I just don't. It has never felt right to me. And even though I bought a license for Lazy Nezumi to fix all of the shoestringing problems I was having with Photoshop, which I could not figure out any other way to fix. Thank you, Photoshop and Wacom, for never working together and getting along well enough to fix user issues. But I just don't. I've never liked painting in Photoshop. It always felt like there were tons of obstacles. It didn't feel like natural to me. It felt like it was breaking my brain just trying to like figure out, how does this software expect me to paint? You know, like, what is this process? I don't even know if I can really explain the details of why, and I know a lot of people get really good results painting in Photoshop, but for me it was just never felt right. Canvas says, I don't know how to set up panels in GIMP, which is why my comics are hand-drawn. Yeah. Panel tools, I've used... Oh, what is that little thing called? There's like a little free app on the iPad in the App Store. Medibang Paint is free, and it has panel tools, so I've used that on one comic so far, and it's, you know, it's good for a free software, and it's available on the iPad, so I kind of just like create my panels on top of my sketch and then import them into Procreate, and then, because I really like drawing in Procreate, I hope I can get to the point where I just really enjoy drawing in Clip as well. There's an artist I really admire on Twitter named Irma, excuse me, sorry. I tried to say her whole name at once and it came out as a combination. Irma, quote, Imo Ahmed. Yes, okay. I had to say that slowly to make sure I said all the parts. And she does these amazing comics and uses Clip Studio, and I was just really inspired by that and wanted to try my hand at comic making, so I was really attracted to the tool set. But at the time I didn't have the license for Clip Studio, and I didn't want to buy the app version on iOS and just have that be like my only version. I wanted to just kind of try comics out at that time. So I used Medibang Paint, which I had like sort of seen somebody else do like a little review of, to just set up that first one. And it worked all right, but like definitely just a little bit clunky having to draw your panels in one app and then like import them into another for drawing and stuff like that. So I am intrigued by the prospect of doing it all in clip someday. The other thing too is like, I can definitely see where, like, if you're doing a webtoon and you find yourself using some of the same, like, layouts, like a whole bunch, to the point where you have, like, almost like a language fluency of layouts, and you, like, intuitively sort of select them. I can see why having templates would be, like, really, really useful if I imagined that, but I'm kind of at a stage where I still am not familiar with making comics, and I want to design each panel as far as like how I want the story to flow, like the timing, the the narrative, like the level of importance of a moment. All of that can be communicated through like the size and placement and shape of the panels, right? So like to me, right now, using templates, I feel like that's like using the graphing calculator before you know the math. And I want to learn the math, you know? I want to learn the panel math. So, that is definitely something I will probably get into using someday, but for this moment, I'll probably keep doing my panels custom every time. But having the panel tools and being able to, like, draw them in and edit them easily without having to hand draw them, like, whew, that will be so nice. Holy cow, we have 5 viewers. That is a new record for me, all at once, 5. Crazy. I'm still really just starting out with streaming, you guys. I really appreciate you being here. I hope this is like somewhat entertaining to watch and to listen to. It's very motivating for me and really exciting to have you here, so thanks for coming, and I hope you enjoy the show. That's the word I'm gonna use, show. So, I guess I could talk a little bit about process here. Yeah, Tay, cheers! 5 whole viewers. So cool. I'm gonna talk a little bit about process. This is a simple image, one character. There's not gonna be a background, and it's a very, like, shape-oriented character. So I am painting on one layer, and I am distinguishing between my shapes with just like different blocks of very similar colors. I really like doing this type of style for playful images and such. Like those of you who know my accounts on other... Yes, well, Damien Swoolly provides the gun show, and all the tickets are free. If you're familiar with my work designing cute patterns for fabrics and products like on Redbubble, it has a similar style to this, although I've been using Max U's colored pencil brush in Procreate when I do those, because I really like the combination of the sort of waxy blending and the chunky, like, variation you get with that brush. But it is the same exact process as what I'm doing here with this very smooth blending oil brush of just, like, blocking in large areas, you know, using a few internal lines or shapes to differentiate where something is overlapping. I want this to be like super readable when it's very small, so I need it to be not challenging at all for the eye to digest. Like, this is specifically for an icon, and it is way harder than you think. Like, at least it's way harder than I thought to create an icon that's super readable at a distance, like when it's like shrunk down to being really small. Being able to still instantly understand what you're looking at is very hard. It's a challenging sort of assignment or task for an artist, so I'm kind of keeping that in mind, that this is going to be viewed very small, and I'm letting there be a little bit of like, you know, texture created by the blending of the brush. But the main thing is I'm going to need my shapes to be super duper visible at a distance, and I'm using the navigator window in the top right corner of the screen to kind of eyeball it periodically. That's like a really small version of this, and it's definitely a good preview. I also need to create a sort of background, and I think what I'm going to do is create a big circle, because the Twitch icons are circles, so it seems like a good move. Now, adventures in super basic, what am I doing with this software town? I need a shape. This looks like a shape tool. Let's do a ellipse shape. Make a layer? Make a new layer? And then, I don't know any keyboard shortcuts yet. It's just like, learning a new software is a whole thing. Okay, how do your tools work? I'm like using Photoshop keystroke shortcuts over here, trying to figure it out. In Photoshop, if you hold spacebar, you can like move the circle that you're drawing, but it does not seem like it's the same for this, so I might just have to create a circle and then move it later. What do you think for like a background color? I'm feeling like I made Damien's eye color green last time, so maybe we'll do like kind of a dark forest green-ish thing. And that's my ellipse. Alright, this seems promising. Paint bucket fill, good. And then move layer is K. That's different from Photoshop for sure. Okay. We're gonna kind of center him on here. And then I am going to paint his eyes, and then I'll turn off the sketch underneath and just work on it like this. Oh my gosh, last stream I kept pushing B for brush, but I was using the pencil tool, so it was supposed to be P for like pen and pencil, and so many times I just janked myself up like using the unexpected brush. It was befuddling is the word I'm gonna use. Okay, actually, I want a cool color for the eye for contrast. I've used like all warm colors on him so far, so if we give his sort of sclera, yeah, that's what it's called, right? Yeah, sclera, the white part of the eye. If we give that a cool color, it should stand out a little more against all the warm colors on him. And of course we're getting a little bit of blending right there. I don't mind that though. I really kind of like it. It has sort of an oil pastel feel. It's like really smooth, gooey blending. It's quite nice. Do not mind that in the least. You know, it's interesting, like, I really hated the feeling of drawing on glass with the Apple Pencil and the iPad, which is why I always have one of those paper-like textured screen protectors on. But this is a Cintiq 22 HD, and, like, I've always been fine with the feeling of the glass with this pen. Not really sure what's up with that. So, I have to, like, recreate his pupils. Hopefully I will get their wall-eyedness correct. In fact, I might just bring this up top and then change the opacity as sort of like a very slight guide, because I really want to capture this maximum derp situation I had going when I sketched this. Really, like, sometimes the like most work as an artist you'll have to do is just trying so darn hard to maintain like the spirit and feeling of your sketch as you develop a drawing. Something about going over a sketch will kind of like water it down, you know what I mean? Like you might lose the sense of movement, the energy, or in this case, I don't want to lose the derp. Yes, ultimate derp. Absolutely, Tay. I don't want to lose that derp. I worked hard for that derp. So I'm just going to keep it visible long enough to place my dorky pupils in the same spot. And then I get the eyebrows in there. Maybe we'll do like absolute black for the eyebrows and see if that might not be visible enough, but for now it's like a good enough placeholder. Who knew we were gonna have to draw thick bushy eyebrows on a woolly, right? Okay. So I think that's good enough to, yes, erase my, or not erase, but toggle my sketch layer. Okay, so a couple things are happening right now as I look up in the navigator in the top right corner. The eye and the mouth and the face area is pretty readable, but we're losing the eyebrows, so I'll have to do something about that. But also, this background color I've picked is a little too dark because we're losing the dark brown ears a little bit and the feet, like they're not as visible as I want. So what I'm gonna do is search for, in Photoshop it would be the hue saturation thing. I don't even know, was that referred to as a filter or... just don't know how to like edit a color that's already on the canvas for this yet. Color set, color slider, intermediate color, approximate color, color history. I do appreciate your patience while I clunk around in here. Remove tones, fill, advanced fill, colorize. The drawing color. Alright, maybe blend, fill. Alright, you know what? Just to save time, I'm gonna pop over into another window really quick and search for the answer so I don't leave you guys hanging too long. I'm just gonna search for clips, studio, color shift. Click on this. Edit, tonal correction, hue and saturation. Okay, so I needed to look for edit, tonal correction. Yeah, I would not have known to look for that. I mean, the phrasing makes sense, but I would not have already known to look for that. Okay, so I'm on my layer. Good. I'm on my layer with the circle. Ooh, actually I really like that. I just accidentally slid it toward blue and I really like it. It's kind of like echoing that cool color I put in the whites of the eyes. Yes, Tay, Google to the rescue. Sometimes it's faster to poke around, but a lot of times it's faster to Google. In this case it was, and I'm really glad. Okay. This is looking good. I like this. This is like... it's tying into the sclera color, which is awesome, and kind of popping that eye white for me, which is good. It is contrasting really nicely with both the pale wool and the dark ears and legs color. Yeah, this is pretty good. I think I'm gonna go with that. Okay. So there's a couple little areas I'm seeing here, I'm going to zoom in a little bit, where in my coloring I kind of missed, oops, that's the wrong layer. That's a thing I do all the time. In fact, I'm going to lock this circle layer lock, just save me from myself. So I'm going to go back through a little bit more zoomed in here and just clean up these areas where there's like little chips in the color, like it hasn't quite fully covered, like the coverage is not quite there. There's probably like a better, faster way to do this than to just go back in with a brush, but here we are. Not really sure. This is what I'm doing this time. It's kind of weird. It's like these little... Oh, you know what? That one a second ago that I was kind of chasing, that was just some dirt on my screen. I was like, why does this little dot keep moving around? I thought I colored over that. When you have a, like, it does not matter if you're like a finicky, like, tidy person. If you have a toddler living in your house all the time, like, she doesn't go to daycare. She lives here. This is the only place she's at most of the time because, you know, pandemic, we can't really go many places, and my husband's a stay-at-home dad, so, yeah, our house is just, like, we've had to adapt to a different expectation of the cleanliness. So if you're wondering, like, how I could have, like, just some fleck of whatever that was on my screen that would trick me, like, oh, trust me, it's just a good thing I don't have a webcam yet. This place is just a tornado zone at all times. Oh my god, we broke another record. There are 6 viewers right now, it says. Never even had 4. This is amazing. Okay. This is just the silliest, and I love it a lot. I want to get a little bit more dark in these pupils. I want them to be as, like, contrasty as possible. He's gonna be excited. I am, like, the biggest dirtbag when it comes to, like, making art for him. I don't know, I think I get, like, kind of, like, nervous or something. I don't know why. Like, he's the person I should be least nervous about making art for, but sometimes I just... anxiety is a confusing creature. But he's gonna be excited that I actually worked on this today. Maybe we'll finish it. Wouldn't that be something? Yeah, I can really get used to this buttery mixing that this oil paintbrush does. This is really sweet. Oh, I don't know if you heard that creak, but that was my cat barging into the room because I left the door cracked. But really my choices are I leave the door cracked and she barges in like that, or she'll stand outside and just paddle on the door for like literally 30 minutes at a stretch, and I chose this instead of having you guys have to listen to cat paddling. So you could kind of consider this, I think I mentioned it a little bit ago, but you could kind of consider this like watching the same as my process for how I do the patterns. Like the artwork I do for patterns is much more chunky and like shape oriented, because I think if you're designing something to print at a variety of scales and on a variety of surfaces, you really want to like concentrate a little bit more on like shape, areas of color. I would have a really hard time, and part of that is just my own lack of real concrete knowledge about printing. But I think it's really challenging to get a complex image with a whole lot of texture to print as expected. So I just go with simple, and it's worked pretty good for me so far. Just imagine that I am using an iPad and that the brush is Max U's colored pencil brush, which is similar in how it blends, except it kind of has a waxy look to it because of the texture, which was really clever of him to like incorporate into a colored pencil brush, because there is like that slight pull between one color and the next when you use fine quality colored pencils. But yeah, if you're ever curious about how I do those, this is a kind of a good insight to that. And you know, like I've had some questions about like doing a tutorial for my rendering process, like a recent picture I did of Priscilla from Moon Factory 5. I had some people asking about that, so I'll probably do like a voiceover tutorial of that soon. But in the meantime, just in case anybody was curious about this other style that I work in sometimes, this video is a nice little peek into that. And if there's more interest in that, I could also make a more direct tutorial for that includes like the steps for, you know, designing the tiling part of the pattern and like kind of how I approach that as well. Not too long ago, Procreate had an update, and in that update they changed the sort of tool set for kind of adjusting your image. Like they added magnetic and snapping features to like when you're moving something around in your canvas, and that really was a game changer for making patterns. So I was like pretty darn stoked about that. So like, what do you guys think? Would a woolly have like little buck teeth? In my other picture of Damien Swoolly, he's just kind of sticking his tongue out. But like, would he have a little tooth here, or would he just be a little gummy man? The woolies are supposed to be like rabbit and sheep mixed, and the weird thing about sheep and other ungulate herbivores is a lot of them don't have any teeth on the top. They just have this sort of like rough patch on their palate, and they sort of smash the food between their lower jaw teeth and the palate on top. So his sheep side says no tooth up top, but his rabbit side says yes, absolutely tooth on top. Alright, so Canvas says I see both working. Tay says I think both is good. Canvas says I imagine Woolly is just having empty Winnie the Pooh mouths, just filled with fluff. I mean, that's valid. And I do think he looked pretty funny with just the empty mouth. I might go with that. Also, I hope you enjoyed my random little foray into way overthinking the anatomy of woolies just then. Tay says, woolies are all fluff inside and out. Canvas says they make good pillows. Not even bones. That's right. He's just like a little rubber hose man with fluff on top. So if you guys have ever seen my "Oh no, I'm offline" picture that pops up when I sign off on Twitch, it's the Damien Swoolly with no wool on. And you can see that he's just a regular little bean body woolly with really long arms. So yeah, he's a little bit of a faker, but I find that incredibly charming. It's like a little kid wearing huge shoes that they found, like their parents' shoes. That's really what he's doing here. And it's adorable. Yes, spaghetti limbs. Okay, gotta be careful not to get too far into that zone of just like modulating little tones, because you're definitely not gonna see that in this small view. Okay, I should probably focus in on that for a minute here. I am gonna bring part of his tail into the light here. I do think he should have kind of like the idea of the shadow from his body and his arm falling on the tail, but then some of the tail is kind of coming out into the area where it would be hit by a light source. Kind of feeling like the tail silhouette is not reading, so I'm gonna take an eraser. Ooh, I need one with a sharper edge. Hard eraser. Oh shoot, last time I figured out what the Nope, it's not that. I figured out what the... Whoa, whoop, whoop. Dynamic... brush scaling was by accident last time, but I've completely forgotten. Oh, there it is. I got it. Control, Alt, right-click, drag. That is a lot of keystrokes, but hey, at least it's easy to do. They're all in the same little clumped area. Okay, so I am going to break this sort of area that smooshed the tail and the arm together, because I really want the tail to be its own island in the silhouette. I think that'll make it like way easier to see what's happening here. Whoopsie daisy. Okay. That's a little better. And I'll define that more in a little bit here. I'm just making these dark areas in between the fluff more pronounced. But I do think it's a good time to address the fact that his eyebrows are super not standing out. So we have a couple options here. We can try to make the eyebrows more visible, or we can create a sharper line on top of the eye and just use the eye shape itself. So let's try that real quick. I'm just gonna use the shape of the eye itself to imply the eyebrows, but I don't think that's quite working. When I look at the navigator, it doesn't make a lot of difference. It's the dark pupil going up in the corner of the eye that's sort of like eliminating the visibility on that. So I'm basically almost in absolute black over here, but even if I go all the way to black, I don't think the contrast will be enough with this brown color. So next I'm going to grab that brown color and kind of scooch it up, shift the hue a little bit, and just kind of create a lighter area on the upper half of his face. Sometimes you're using gradients to introduce the natural variety that real-world lighting creates, and even if you're in a very not real-world looking style at the moment, it tends to have a lot of appeal, just incorporating lots of gradients, because the truth is, anything without a gradient will look kind of strange to your eye, because in real life, even if you have a big signboard that's all painted one color, you are not going to be able to ever see the exact same shade across that entire signboard in a lighting situation that's just naturally occurring in the world and not contrived. So it's important to appeal to the eye by giving color variation so that it just feels quote unquote right. Your eye will just be like, yeah, that makes sense. So and the other thing is you can kind of tell a little bit of visual lie with this. The lie is that we have different colors on the face, that the top half of his face is lighter than the rest, because it's not going to read that way. It's still going to read like his face is one same local color, but we are hopefully going to give the impression of that at the same time gaining the benefit of having this color variation and these sort of gradients, because that is going to give the the features, the eyebrows, the eyes, something to sort of pop against. And already it's made a little bit of difference in our navigator. We're still not getting a ton of ooh, it's really standing out the eyebrows, and we might not ever get like 100% that, but every little bit helps, you know? And if we kind of work our way to this lighter tone and have those gradients, you won't quite notice just how different it is. Like, I wonder if I can just grab a really solid, yeah, I think this. So check this out. Look how much lighter that color is to the dark part of the ear, that dark local color. That's the lie we're telling, is that that color is the same as that dark brown on the ear, because we've worked up to it with a slightly gradual approach. So the eye doesn't quite notice. It's not like a jarring leap that looks like a different color zone. It just looks like a natural shift due to like lighting or the environment around this guy. Those kinds of like lighting principles what is that? Are super relevant even in an extremely stylized picture. Like, you may not think so, but like when you know those sort of rules about the physicality of like light and color, you can manipulate them. You can more easily get the effect you want. You have more tools in your toolbox. If you have that understanding, it's huge. It makes a pretty big difference. So even if you're kind of just looking at it in a semi-academic sense, I definitely recommend like studying light and color for the sake of just having more tools to apply to your very stylized art, because it does help. And yeah, these types of like small shifts are not going to be visible at the icon size, but I'm just kind of enjoying myself, and I'm visualizing that, you know, there might be a case where he may want to use this image in a couple of ways, so it might be nice to give it a little bit of extra love. Okay, I'm trying to figure out, these little clover paws defy reality in many ways, so. Okay, so then the other thing I'm gonna do real quick is just kind of, yeah, he does. He does have those Mewtwo hands. They are extremely Mewtwo. Okay, so I'm just gonna kind of smoosh some of this. Yeah, that's beautiful. Like, I love a brush that you can do your blending with the brush in a way that just feels like it makes sense. Because that's really the dream, right? Like, you want, at least what I am always looking for is like more ways to reduce the number of like steps or shifts or like abstractions between my brain and what I want to do and the art. Like, you want it to be as close to think and make the art by thinking as it possibly can be. And although that's a super extreme like notion, the idea in principle is still there of like, I don't want to have to like switch tools to a smudger or a blender. I've never really gotten into using smudging tools. I like blending on the canvas, I really do, but I don't want to switch tools to do it. I love a brush that lets me blend with the brush. Okay, I'm gonna give him Got an idea. Okay, why don't we do it like this? Give the impression that he's sort of curling his little bizarro fingers. His Mewtwo hands. It's like the weird combination of like wanting the clover shape, but like how do you actually pose this in 3 dimensions? Doesn't really work. Okay, so I need my sharp eraser and I'm just gonna slightly edit this silhouette. Anytime it's not working, like, don't be afraid to just cut. Because you'll be able to figure it out again. Like, don't be precious about that. You can always, like, copy your layer if you're feeling nervous and you're like, oh, but I might mess up and I might not like it as well. Just copy your layer and then you'll have a little backup built into your file. You can go back to it. That's one reason why my I've never before given out PSDs, because my process involves like iterating using layers, and I just sort of use the layers as a bookmark and then move on with the painting. So I don't know for sure if that's like really confusing to look at. It's not the clean, like, really understandable layer process that a lot of artists, you know, kind of show in tutorials and breakdowns. So I've always been kind of like, I guess, sort of self-conscious about that and just been like, will this be useful to people? I don't know. Like, it's definitely not super... It's definitely not like super... I mean, it's organized, but it's like sedimentary, right? Like, the higher in the layer order something is, the more recent that step was in the painting process. So it has a sense of organization to it in that way. But yeah, I'm just not sure how useful it is for someone kind of watching that process. And yet it is, you know, from a genuine standpoint, it is my process. So if that's what somebody is like hoping to learn about when they ask for a tutorial, then I suppose I'd better just give it to them, right? Okay, so what I'm doing now is working these shapes into like stronger, darker areas of color and line that will separate the shapes in a distant view, like this navigator, or when it gets shrunk down and used as an icon. Okay. Oh yeah, that blending is just so satisfying. It's just so available. I love that. Tell you what, it is so good to use it feels so good to use a software for painting that was deliberately designed for painting. I mean, like, I gripe about Photoshop a lot, but like the truth is Photoshop wasn't built from the ground up as a painting software, right? Like, this is an image editing and selection based tool. It's not a painting tool. Like, it became one because it was like the closest thing people had for a while there that was like really fully featured, but it wasn't made to be that way. So it just makes sense that it wouldn't quite feel right for painting compared to a software package that is, you know, very well featured like Clip Studio, but at the same time, you know, built specifically with painting and drawing in mind. Like, wow. Makes a big difference, it does. Okay. So the big thing about Damien Swoolly is we really need his muscle wool to be highly readable. Boy, muscle wool. I bet you've never heard that phrase uttered before by a human being. Just doesn't make any sense, does it? Muscle wool. Okay, and the other thing I'm going to do is pull this sort of lighter color that we used in the dark face and ears and clover hands And I'm gonna start pushing it into the occluded crevices of the wool to further break it up. You'll hear artists that have worked on 3D work refer to the ambient occlusion. It's a term that's used in 3D to describe the way the renderer that you're using, whether it's you're baking out an ambient occlusion map on a 3D model to build a texture based off of. I'm getting a little bit technical here. I do apologize if that's a little bit obscure for you guys, but it comes into play. Like, a lot of people who do both 3D and 2D work really have this like practiced recognition of ambient occlusion. And what that means is essentially where shapes and forms face each other rather than the light source, you get these sort of like crevices of like shadow, like it gradiates into shadow as the form turns away from the light and faces another form. And it's a great starting point because regardless of your lighting situation, you're always going to have that occlusion. Like, if nothing else, even if you have light coming from all sides, in the most heavily occluded areas, you are still going to have a little bit of that shadow where surfaces face each other instead of the light source. So it's really like, it's good practice to, if you're not a 3D artist, you don't have access to those tools, you don't have that sort of software literacy or like the words to really like search for what you want online. A good way to kind of practice that skill of seeing and recognizing ambient occlusion is to look at the untextured copies of people's 3D models. Like, just go on like ZBrush Central or ArtStation is another good place. Like, find some beautiful 3D models and look at their, most people will do at least one render pass to display the model without color and texture on it. And in that image, like, a lot of times it will be like white, kind of a marbly color, or just something that expresses the full range of values. You're going to see, you're going to see the lighting that they pick. And hopefully that will be obvious. Like, they'll have like kind of a simple lighting structure to show off the model as well as possible. But you're also going to see that ambient occlusion. And especially if you see like breakdowns people are doing of their 3D work, they may have an ambient occlusion pass that they show as part of their breakdown. And so you can even just like search ambient occlusion or ambient occlusion map or ambient occlusion pass, and you'll find some images that are peeling out every other kind of light except the ambient occlusion. And you could do drawings based on that, like a study essentially, to kind of like familiarize yourself with, what that is. And it's like if you're doing a completely neutral lighting scheme, or like that's the way you're thinking about it, and you just want, like, the dramatic lighting is super fun, but sometimes you just want to do like a simple, readable image, and some types of dramatic lighting can sort of confuse the eye about the form, if you're really reading it at a distance. Like, it's sort of really popular these days, I've noticed, to do like a sort of peekaboo light on a character's face. Like, you have, for the most part, like the face is in shadow, but then there's like one shaft of light that really hits strongly on the face, and you have this like little island of like really bright light, and you see all the subsurface scattering in the skin in between that shadow and light, and it's very beautiful. But, like, I would not say that that's like the best choice in all cases, right? Sometimes you are going to want a different lighting scheme, and the basic basis, like the most bottom level, that you build on top of for any lighting scheme is the idea of ambient occlusion, because it will always be there, regardless of the lighting scheme. So that was my unexpectedly long rant about ambient occlusion. But if you're watching this and listening with the idea in mind that you are an artist and you want to, get some ideas about, how to learn more about painting and lighting on characters, I think it's really useful. It's definitely served me well, just having that sort of like background knowledge and literacy of, lighting from working on 3D work. Okay, getting a little carried away with this part, so I probably better back up for a minute. Like, the most important thing right here is that we are reading the muscles in this little icon-sized copy. And I think they are getting there. They're definitely reading. The thing that's going to do the most work for us is the silhouette. So, once again, I find myself questioning this tail. Going to trim the silhouette even more and try to get some space between this beefy arm and this puffy tail. I don't think having the arm and the tail close together is really serving me right now. So let's do that. I just assume that you guys want to hear me talk about art. But maybe, like, because it's hard for me to sort of buy into the idea that, like, people I've never met on the internet are gonna want to hear about just random, like, dorky stuff for, like, oh my gosh, you know what? I forgot his little boucle. Gotta get that little coil in there. That's a critical character feature. Yes, Jinjo, his stupid little legs are, they are a joy. A mood lifter, if you will. But yeah, I just assumed that, like, that other people are like me and they really want to, like, use their time. And that might be just because I have so little, like, time in my schedule. But I like listening to things that are informative, right? Like, I like feeling like while I'm relaxing and while I'm just enjoying myself, I'm also kind of learning something. That's just my personality, I guess. But I hope that the sort of art commentary and background info is something that you guys enjoy. Okay. You know what else I want to do is give his little peepers a little bit of pop on this. Actually, you know what? I need a pen for this. The oil paint's not going to work because it's just so blendy. But this color change one, the preview, doesn't show much blending. So maybe this will work? Oh yeah, that's pretty good. I'm just going to color pick white. I almost forgot that giving him these little eye highlights is sometimes just really hilarious. Gotta be a little careful with those. I'm actually gonna put him on a new layer until I'm happy with him. You don't want to, like, confuse the pupil by breaking the edge, so we do need to give a little bit of a value shift at the top of these little sclera. Give that idea of, like, it's ironic because what you'd be looking at is the shadow of the eyelid on the sclera if this was like a person and this was at all, like, realistic, you know? But his eyelids have clearly gone on a vacation in this image. Where are they? We don't know. And yet, if we incorporate this shadow, it's going to make his dumb, hilarious eyes even better because the highlight will sit on top of that shadow on the sclera and give us a little bit of like dimension to the eyes. Make it long, a really long, stupid highlight on his very silly, stupid eyes. And you're kind of just barely seeing that in the navigator, but I like that. That little pop of highlight can really go a long way. And we're not going to use that bright white anywhere else inside this circle, so it should maintain its power of absolute white. Okay, the next thing I want to do is create a new layer and then make it a clipping layer. It's going to clip to the layer below it, I believe, is how it works. So I'm going to zoom out a little bit, and I'm going to get an airbrush. Soft seems good, but I'm wondering what is the difference between soft and shadow? I have no idea. But let's blow this brush up a bit. Just see what happens. Okay, it doesn't seem to have a multiplicative effect, because if we color sampled this and then it got darker when we painted it, that would indicate that, but it didn't. So now we're gonna shift it a little bit and see. Should I just want more saturation? Okay, so it does have some kind of mathematical shift. Okay, we're gonna switch back to soft and see how that goes. Gotta blow this brush up. What I want is to give just the slightest shift inside the circle. It's sort of like almost subliminal, but it pops the contrast close to his wool. Might have been too much. I might clear it real quick. Let's redo that. Okay, and then I'm gonna toggle it on and off so you can kind of see. Like, you probably wouldn't realize the gradient was there if I hadn't talked about it or pointed it out, but it creates a slightly more contrast without making the overall read on the blue circle as a darker color or a more saturated color. So I like that. It's sort of like pushing that warm white of the wool forward a little more and kind of like popping all those warm tones closer to the viewer, which is what we want after all. Okay. So the next thing I'm noticing is I don't really have a sense of priority in the character across all this wool. I've got my shapes, which is good, and that's what I wanted. But now I want another clipping layer, and then I'm gonna press new layer, and then I'm gonna press clip. Now what I want to do is knock down, whoopsie, whoa, I just learned something. Okay, wait. Okay. Sorry, you are witnessing me accidentally learning keyboard shortcuts. So if I press minus, it just sort of rotates. It's just rotating counterclockwise. But where is its like, it's opposite? What is the keystroke that rotates it the other way? I have not found it. Oh well, guess that's gonna go in my list of stuff I should look up later? You'd think it would be like right next to it, right? Like here's clockwise, here's counterclockwise. But when I click like control, it zooms out or zooms in. When I click shift, it's just trying to create like a straight line. And when I click alt, it's just trying to color sample. So I am not sure what the other keystroke would be. That was a tangent. Okay, let's go back. What I was really trying to do is zoom in a little bit. So I'm gonna take this wool color and I'm gonna actually get a little bit brighter, not bright white, but close to it. And what I'm gonna do is try a blending mode. And I think maybe soft light. It's still affecting that one more. Okay, Yeah, blending modes are kind of tricky. Pretty sure there's one that will end up affecting the wool more than the other stuff, but I might just have to go in and brush it more carefully than I wanted to. So first I'm going to try this, essentially using an airbrush to brighten up the top of the character and let that kind of create a gradient from top to bottom. And see what I think about that. Because I don't know if darkening the bottom of the character is going to be quite what I want. This is a downside of painting all your stuff on one layer, is when you want to separate out just the pale stuff and do kind of a gradient over it, it's like not very possible to do that easily. Do soft eraser, just erase out of that ear real quick. See what that does. I don't know, maybe. Not really feeling it yet. I think I'll try the other way and create a layer. Oops, it was already clipping. Interesting. Go to multiply. And that is too light to function as multiply layer, so we're going to darken it. It's really not that dark, this color I'm going to use. So what I want is a very subtle... You know what? I'm using an eraser. Woo! That is silly. Okay, there we go. Okay, cool. That's much more what I'm looking for. So what I want to do is just create a very slight top to bottom kind of gradient on this character. It's sort of like, it feels a little bit like cheating in a way, because it is not exactly it's not exactly founded on any really specific, you know, element of this lighting. But as I was saying earlier, in nature, just like in your life, if you just like look around the room you're in now, like the truth is, if you took a brain photograph and then color picked anything of the same surface, like the wall from the left to the right or the top to the bottom, or like a poster that's hanging on your wall, the top corner of the white border of the poster and the bottom corner of the poster, they're not going to be the same because they're a different distance and or angle to the light source. So gradients tend to feel more natural, more naturalistic, perhaps I should say, than a solid color that is completely the same across a surface. So the gradient is kind of like, even if it's used in a really clumsy way, it can yield this sort of like sense of realism, and it can be really useful that way. The other thing is, in most cases, when you're talking about a character, the light source is going to be closer to the top of the character than the bottom of the character, because with very few exceptions, we usually don't put light sources on the floor. Like, usually a light source is going to be in the ceiling, or it's up on a table, or it's like a floor lamp that has this long stalk and then the lamp is like up above your eye level. It's going to be closer to the top of the character. So what you're going to see is that the gradient that goes across your character being darker at the bottom and lighter at the top is feels very natural. When your eye sees it, your brain kind of goes, yeah, that makes sense. So still don't know about this one. I might delete it and redo that part. So yeah, like, it's kind of a really easy, it's an easy move. Like, you don't have to know very much. You don't have to be very experienced to utilize this kind of tendency in nature, in all the places where you usually see people and like figures, right? Like you're going to see them in a condition where the natural gradient of light across their body is lighter at the top, darker at the bottom. So if you incorporate that into your artwork, your character art, people's eyes, people's brains tend to recognize it and accept it like immediately. Okay, I'm gonna group these two. Just do that. Whoops! Okay, that destroyed the clipping mask. Well, I just wanted to be able to turn them off together. Maybe if I put all three of these things in a group and then put a group inside that group. The group has a clipping mask. Interesting. That's cool. Oh dear. Oh wow. Okay. We are learning things about layer order in Clip Studio right now. Yep, okay, that doesn't work. So I guess I just have to turn them off individually until I learn more about that. But you can kind of see the difference if I sort of toggle them on and off. Oh yeah, you can just kind of swipe it. There you go. Okay. And like being subtle with it is good, so I might drop the opacity a little bit on my shadow layer. Just a smidge. I kind of want it to be like one of those things where if you're doing it right, it's not that noticeable. There are cases where that's an exception though. Like you'll notice in hand-painted textures or baked-in lighting in video games that a character is going to have a really, really strong top to bottom lighting gradient. Like a really good example is like in a MOBA, like in the League of Legends character textures, or really not just a MOBA, but like anything where you're gonna see like a bunch of characters on the screen, or the characters are really small on the screen, or you're third person and the camera is pretty far behind you. Like you can see this in a lot in like Blizzard's textures for World of Warcraft and stuff, but they'll have a really, really strong gradient from top to bottom, and it kind of just improves the read on the character and like fits them into the environment a little better. So definitely recommend using it. Okay, the next thing I want to do is I want to get the little leggy stalks to be shadowed by the body a little bit more. So going to alpha lock, or lock transparent pixels is what this button is called. I'm going to zoom in, I'm going to color pick my little body color, and then I'm going to shift it down pretty close to black. I still have my eraser equipped. Look at that. I'm learning to pay attention to what tool I have active. So I'm just going to draw a little shadow here. What does lighting do for you? It grounds things. It changes the abstraction just a little bit to follow some of the rules of reality. So your brain sort of greets it and recognizes it more instantly. Okay. Gonna clean up this little area where you can see the background through it. There we go. Okay, I'm feeling pretty good about the visibility of this. I do want the ears to like pop a little bit more. You know, I might lock the visibility again, color pick my little shadow color, and I might just make the ears darker at the tips. Now this isn't lighting, it's color, it's local color. So what we're doing right now is describing that in the actual anatomy of this creature, its little ear tips are darker than the rest of it. And that was pretty extreme. I might want to go a little bit gentler with that. Don't want it to be like too in your face, but I do want it to read like really pop from that background color. I don't know why Damien Swoolly's ears stick up from a anatomy perspective, because most woolies, their ears are always kind of like down, but he doesn't have room for ears hanging down. His muscles take up too much room. So, you know, he's probably just trained his ears to stand up. I don't know what this is, this brush decoration. Okay. I didn't mean to select decoration. I'm gonna go back to oil paint. And I just want to get a little bit, this is another sort of like little ambient occlusion area that I didn't really focus on earlier because I was really just looking at the wool at the time. But where the wool is occluding the ear, I do want a little bit of shadow. Tay says his ears are strong, and you are correct. It's probably the only part of him that is like genuinely very muscular. Is whatever holds these ears up. It's toned as heck. It's like how, you know, little birds, or just birds in general, have these like huge pectoral muscles, basically, to flap the enormous wings. Like the whole reason why a bird has like a really deep chest and a keel bone and like this huge massive muscle at the breast of the bird is to flap wings, right? So like somewhere under his wool, maybe he just has these little bulgy, you know, muscle groups attached to his head. Or maybe they're like kind of inside the sort of circular skull shape. This little fluffy head. I don't know. I don't know what the actual anatomical canon is for these ears. I guess they don't really have to like flap hard enough to make him fly. They just stand up at all times. That was too much, but I do like this shade right here. Little tiny bit more really deep occlusion where the head is overlapping with the body. And then the other thing I kind of want, head empty, only muscle. Yes, that is the answer. You cracked it. Okay, I'm gonna scooch this color down. What I really want right now, and I'm gonna switch to a color change because this has less mixing in it. And I do want to get this like kind of hard, solid color in here. I want to get this like little shadow because inside of his mouth is going to be a lot of occlusion. The light source is not going to be able to like hit this from very many angles because the jaw, the upper lip, the mouth is all going to occlude it. So we need a little deep shadow in there. Okay, I'm gonna switch back to oil paint and kind of blend it a little bit. Okay, I like that. Also, I think I kind of want the bottom of his face to go a little bit farther back into that dark brown. Once again, kind of incorporating that top to bottom lighting that we talked about is really common for characters and just sort of makes sense to our eye. So I'm actually even going to go one step further and make the very bottom even darker. And this is not only for the sake of the top to bottom gradient, it's also because this guy has a round, like, 8-ball for a head. So that is the area that's turning away from the upper light source anyway. So you would want this sort of shadowed area on the bottom. You would want it. Okay. I am really liking this. It is dumb as heck. And if you know me, you know I really like dumb stuff. I'm gonna try one more time to like kind of pump up the contrast around the eyebrows. It might not work because we're already pushing it pretty far up here. But at the really distant icon level, I'm wondering if it might make enough of a difference to be worth it. So I'm just gonna try it, and I will trust in the power of undo in case this doesn't work. And failing that, I will trust in the power of me to just paint the other color back on. Like, you definitely want to respect your own time and not do inefficient things that make you redo work. But you also want to trust in yourself that if you did it right once, you can do it right again, and it'll probably be even better the second time. Okay, I'm gonna zoom out gradually here. Is that worth it? Probably should have made it a different layer just so I could toggle it on and off, but I'm gonna try blending it and then see how I feel about it. I, for real, did not expect the first stream I did that had 6 people in it to be this ridiculous muscle woolly, but here we are, and here you are, and you know, let's just celebrate this moment. Tay says it's the attention he deserves, to be honest. Yeah, I mean, like, I think so, but I just always assume that I'm like off in my own little weird opinion island. To see that like corroborated is very stunning to me. Okay. We've done a really crazy job on his eyebrow situation, forehead area. It's getting a little Groucho marks up in here. I'm gonna give his forehead a little bit more consistency. Somebody just left. They were like, oh, you're right, this is really silly. Why am I watching this? Nah. I'm sure they probably just had to go, I don't know, eat a snack. Okay, I'm actually pretty happy with that. And it's tempting to create more form in this sort of like head fleece, but it sort of feels like a trap, because what I don't want is to like put a bunch of shadow down here, which I'm just gonna kind of muck in for the sake of argument. I don't want to lose the distinction between that form, that shadow between the head and the body that I worked so hard to create, so... But if I kind of toggle this stroke on and off in the icon area, actually kind of works, so I'll go ahead with it. It's just really important to check your work at the end scale. You know, it doesn't have to be always this really tiny scale, because if that's not the way you intend for your viewer to see this thing, you know, it may not be the most faithful representation that you can base your, you know, judgment on. But it can help you kind of see what the overall read is and not get lost in the details. But for this case, we do want to pay attention to that navigator view as sort of our guidepost, because this is supposed to be an icon in the end. It's supposed to be like a little buddy that you can use at different scales, and it works. Especially the little teeny tiny scale. And the person I'm making this for, my husband, is not a digital artist, so he needs an image that will just work, you know? Oh, welcome, Cascade Secret. A Swoolly! That's right, that's what he is. He is Damien Swoolly. He is my... He is the OC I have given the most attention to, because that's the kind of person I am, apparently. I don't know, I'm a little bit bashful about OCs, like, creating them, sharing them. But this guy, I was very confident about unveiling. Okay, make that a bit bigger. Just kind of resolve some of these areas that are a little bit ambiguous. And gave a little bit more shading, and I'm looking at the navigator view, the tiny navigator view in the top right, and I'm feeling like pretty good about this. Like, I don't think we've really lost too much by adding in that little bit of definition on the bottom side of his fluff. So I'm gonna go with it. Okay, I'm pretty happy with this, you guys. I'm like feeling pretty good about it. Now I'm just kind of wondering if I should do anything with this sort of circle form. I mean, one thing I should do, oh, darn it, I did that. I have triggered it, the weird rotation key. There we go. One thing I should do is resize this canvas so that it makes some more sense around this circle. And I don't really know 100% about the canvas rotation tools here, but there should be like a crop feature. Select, crop, crop. There we go. Alright, that's pretty good. I'm sure this has alignment tools in it somewhere to make sure it's perfectly aligned, but for right now it looks kind of like close enough to me. I might want to... Like, here's the question. Did that work? Did it do anything? Doesn't seem to have. Oh, it's only scaling the one. Okay. So forget that. Just cancel out of that. So what I was trying to do just there is use a transform operation on 2 layers at once, which Procreate can do. And maybe there's a way this program can do it, but I was apparently not doing it properly just then. You know what I'm wondering now is if, I mean, like, we've treated this guy as having a general top-down light source, so maybe he needs a little cast shadow underneath him. And I'm gonna do it in a really general, like, hopefully not disruptive way. I'm gonna just sample this, get a little bit of a darker color. I'm gonna bust my brush down to a smaller size, and I'm just gonna give it like a very vague... It's almost just like occlusion between the character and the ground plane. It's not even like a strong cast shadow. Like, you're not seeing the shape of the character in this, you're just seeing this sort of generalized area beneath them where some of the light is prevented from scattering into this space. Cool. And then the one other thing I want to do is create another clipping layer and put it at the top of the clipping layer stack. And I want to give the bubble he's in itself a little bit of a top-down gradient, just ever so slightly. Just slightly. And probably go like kind of straight across with that. Yeah, that's giving it like some nice depth. I like that. Looking at the preview in the top right again, and I feel like that is improving the readability. And I really enjoy that. Effect. Okay, I'm gonna try one more thing. I'm feeling like his little, like the lighting on his feet is kind of a lie, because even though they're facing upward, they shouldn't be that bright, because they're at the bottom of the character. That occluding shadow is right on top of them. There's not really like a good reason why they should be that bright. So I have my lock transparent pixels active for this main paint layer. I'm gonna reduce the size of this airbrush. I just sampled this dark color where there's occlusion of the ear, the base of the ear, and I'm just gonna like gently brush that. So we still have that slight difference between the bottom and the top of the foot of lighting, but mostly I'm gonna just force these weird janked up legs back into mostly a silhouette read is what you would call it, is like you are seeing them primarily by the shape and silhouette that they're casting in the image. Okay, so feeling pretty good about this. I'm looking at it in the top right. It's quite readable. Feels good. I want to... I think I want to... This always happens too for me, is the farther I get in an image, the more like insecure I am about making a decision I'll want to go back on later, because the farther you are in the image, the more you would have to redo if you change your mind. So what I'm going to do right now, which I wasn't doing earlier in the process, is duplicating this layer, which is silly because it's just a solid colored circle. But I just want to preserve that color. I don't want to lose that color because I was really, really happy with it. And the options are angry because I locked it. That's why. Okay, so what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to lock transparent pixels again. I have my airbrush active with soft as the setting. I'm going to take this color, I'm going to shift it just a little bit, just slightly into green. I'm going to pull it down. I had a painting teacher that said if you're going to change the value, meaning the relative lightness or darkness of the color, you also need to shift the hue. It's basically saying you can never have one without the other. You need to focus on that. It needs to be present because basically your eye will recognize it as a lie if it's not. And actually, I kind of forgot that I wanted to keep that same value. So if we were to do that, I think we would also need to change our little cast shadow buddy to multiply and then really crank back the opacity. So that way it's going to inherit the color underneath. And then I'm going to change this to, I think, overlay. Kind of like that. And then I'm going to reduce the opacity on that too. So with a normal layer at 100% opacity, you're just seeing the pixels that you painted on. But when you're using a sort of like multiplicative or subtractive, you know, if you're using a blending mode, which is essentially applying math to the pixels that you have colored in the specific way that goes along with that description, which I don't know well enough right in my head to just describe it perfectly to you, but basically remember that blending modes are math. So sometimes, like with multiply, your the intensity of the effect of that color is, specifically in the darkness category, is gonna be so much more intense. It's literally multiplied you know, it's many times as intense. So that's why I'm having to kind of like knock the opacity back down. And I'm even gonna knock the opacity down of that color shift layer. No, I'm not, because that's taking the clipping mask with it. Okay, I'm going to grab that. I'm gonna get that color. Okay, cool. So that's just sort of like depth that's happening. You know, the more I look at this, like, I like the fact that I was thinking of it in terms of a circle, because that is what the Twitch icon lives in, is a circle. But I'm thinking now that I actually need to, 1, crop my image again, and 2, bring it all the way to the corners. Because I want this to be an icon. I mean, the icon file has to be a square, right? And I could make it a PNG and make everything behind this circle transparent, but it might be nice if the square, it was like also possible to use this as a square icon if he wants to use it in another area. So that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna like kind of smash this down. I'm gonna make all of my pixels unlocked on this layer, and then I'm just gonna see if I can like distort transform. It's a really bizarre thing. It's just gonna become like a scale up, so I should probably just do a scale up. Why is that like unequal? It's really weird. Oh, I think I just changed my keyboard from Japanese to English or something like that. Okay. Whoa, okay. I guess I don't have to hold that down. Just sort of doing stuff. Release! Release, darn you! Just finish the operation. Okay. Cool, cool, cool. So once again, really, really glad that I built that as a circle, because it really allowed me to visualize the exact way I wanted this to behave as a circular icon. That's really important, is you want to have in mind exactly what is this image for? Like, why are you creating it? How do you expect it to be used? So you're going to want to have that in mind and always compare what you're doing to the desired end result, or the way you want it to be used. So I'm really glad I did that, but now stretching it out to a rectangle or a square, I can be confident that it's going to work both ways, and it feels good. Like, the gradients are still working nicely, lighting feels good. I'm pretty happy with this. Queen says, art. Bongo cats. Cascade says, thank you for the art tips. Oh, you're welcome. I'm really happy that you enjoy that part of this. I always want to hear that stuff. I'm like, yeah, collect it, right? Hoard the art tips, hoard the knowledge. But not in the sense of like not sharing it, but just pile it up, right? Stash it. Like saving 1 billion images to your hard drive to be like, ooh, and this is good lighting, and this is good brush strokes, and just like squirreling away everything. It's good. Okay, I'm gonna create a new layer because the last thing I want to kind of attempt, I don't know if it's gonna work, it might not be feasible at the scale that I want this image to be used, but what I would like to try is giving him his eye color. A little band of iris color inside his goofy little eyes. Sounds kind of funny. Like, they're still going to be ridiculously dilated because that's just who he is. But I do think it might be funny to give him his little green eyes. You might notice that, like, these eyes are definitely not, like, perfectly round at all. And I'm, like, really fine with that because the sort of, like, janky clunkiness of this image really fits with the mood, right? Like, it's meant to be humorous. And, like, humor has a lot of room for a little bit of jank. And I really appreciate that, so I'm not worried about it. I'm actually going to zoom. I'm kind of going to do a crime right now and zoom in like way farther than I should, but it's just so I can kind of get back this tiny little amount of like black edge with a small brush. Okay, cool. And then I want to like kind of smash this together. We want even the iris to support this idea that his eyes are like really wall-eyed, and I feel like I'm actually kind of losing it a little bit. Like, they kind of almost look like they're looking up, but I really want them to look like one is really wandering, or they're both really wandering. So, oh my holy crap, we have 7 viewers. We're just breaking records right and left in here. So crazy. Seriously, you guys, the most I ever had before tonight was 3. So I need to scooch his eyeball sideways a little bit. Because I just really, really need the extreme derp of the original sketch to come through. It's just very important to me. It's like the single most important thing about this image is the derp. So I'm just gonna keep shoving this eye a little farther from its partner until I feel like the appropriate level of derp has been achieved. I should probably stop talking about how many viewers are currently in here, because every time I do, somebody leaves. But it's all good. I get it. Like, got places to be, got, like, you know, snacks to eat. It's definitely, like, feels like the snacking hour to me. Just happy people are stopping by. Hopefully enjoying the show. Oh, I'm so glad I did this on a new layer, you guys. Because I am really starting to manipulate the eyes, and now I can kind of like toggle it on and off. Yeah, that feels a little closer to me. But now I'm noticing that, like, before, the eyes definitely have like a squish to the vertical axis. Like, they're a little bit oval. And I like that, and I think I'm kind of losing that by trying to get this round shape to the iris. So I'm going to bring that back. I'm going to just kind of like squoosh. Squoosh. Get that really ridiculous shape back of this sort of like squashed look. It's like he derped so hard that his whole self kind of like did a squash and stretch. Or like you imagine his like idle animation if he's like a 3D animated character or a 2D animated character. I guess they can have idle animations too. It's definitely like a weird like vertical bounce that squishes his whole face. That's what I'm picturing anyway. So I was like trying to preserve that black line outside the green eye, and now I've totally ditched it. His entire body is flexing. Yes. That's how it works. He's just like, he's actually like a spatial genius or something. Like, he's transcendent. His brain can like affect his whole being, his whole physical being, and he's just using it to like squash and stretch, bounce and bounce. He's like he wants to be like this meathead guy, but he's actually like a super smart weirdo manipulating space and time with his strange brain, which we actually already established was just the muscles that holds up his ears. So now we've just gone full circle. We talked about him being a brainiac, but his brain is a muscle, so now he's a meathead again. It's like an Ouroboros. The lore of Damien Swoolly is getting more complex by the hour. I do hope in this weird little project that I am doing, my husband will know that I love him. Love him enough to make the derpiest icon in the universe. Okay. So we talked about his lighting being mostly top down, but we also gave the highlight in his eye is off to the screen left position, so the highlight inside his irises should be opposing that. The primary highlight is screen left, so the highlight should be screen right. And another thing that I've been doing lately, and what I did in the last image of Damien Swoolly I made, is kind of just like cheating some extra color into the iris. Because it just sort of pops. And you may not be able to really see and perceive that color at the distance, but it still has this sort of like subtle effect. And I think it's worth doing. Like, I don't think this is gonna be really, really readable in the icon on Twitch. But you know, my icon is also Damien Swoolly. The head, it's mostly the head, so it's like a little bit more visible. But again, we're this far in, and like, what if we end up wanting to use this image for something else too? That's my excuse. That's my rationalization for breaking my own rules about just focusing on it as an icon. Don't worry about it. I have a little bit of overspray going on here with this lighting, so I am gonna go in here and erase a little bit. Soft brush. It's kind of interesting. There's kind of like a screen tone look to this airbrush I was using earlier. I wonder what that's about. It's kind of unexpected, but it's interesting. Kind of gives a neat textural quality. I'll have to explore that deliberately later. Right now, it's just an accident that happened. But I find my curiosity piqued. Okay. Back to full size, screen size. Yeah, you know what? I'm like really, really happy with this, and we're right about time to stop the stream for the night. How perfect is that? It's about as good as we could expect. I'm just gonna take a last look at this silhouette and see if there's a way I can make it even more readable. Always gotta remember silhouette. It's the most important thing in a lot of cases. Not every time, but in a lot of cases it's like the one aspect to rule them all. He turned out so beautifully. Thank you! I appreciate that. I'm pretty happy with it. It's always nice when you can like complete something in one sitting. That's kind of like what I was talking about at the very start of this stream, is like I need to learn to not render everything so completely. And I know that this kind of looks like, well, but you did. But like, this is a light kind of form of rendering. Like for me, this is unusual. It's like it has a lot of areas that are, you know, there's a gradient over them, but they are one shape. Like, it's not breaking up shapes quite as much as I would in one of those like kind of painting situations, like fully rendered, you know, 13-hour painting. And I've kind of just been relaxing and talking throughout this process, so I also consider it like by no means like a rushed, trying to be fast situation. I don't know what happened to me, you guys. Like, I used to go to figure drawing basically every week for a long time. And then I would like, you know, take a break or something would happen in my life. But the next opportunity I had to like go to figure drawing every week, I would do it for like a couple months. And whenever I was doing that, I can be really fast in figure drawing. Like in a 10-minute session, you know, I can get something pretty developed, and I'm over here being like, why am I so slow when I'm doing like this kind of work when I can be so fast in figure drawing? I don't know. It is an unsolved mystery. I will let you know if I figure it out though. Okay, so I'm just refining the silhouette just a tiny bit. Just kind of giving certain areas like a little tiny push, and it's probably pretty subtle, that effect, but I just think it makes this sort of like wool muscle arms slightly more bulbous, which I like. He is flexing on us. Yes, I like that. Give me all your sheep puns and all your muscle puns together. Okay, now I'm just kind of noodling. I should probably stop. Okay. So I'm gonna back up, do screen size, save. That's very important. I haven't used this software a whole lot yet, but I can tell you for sure already that it is way more stable than a lot of other software I use. So, good on you, Clip Studio, for being quite stable. Like, actually, come to think of it, I left this computer on for like a week. I would put it to sleep at night, you know, just select the sleep mode and let it hibernate. But I just was being lazy and I didn't want to like reopen all my software and my tabs every morning, so I just left it on. And I kid you not, Clip Studio never even hiccuped. And I forgot to save that last stream that I did last week. I never saved it until today when I like opened the computer up and I was like, oh, wait a minute. So I just had this software open for like 7 days or something. And actually it's 5 days, I think. But and it never crashed and it never lost the data. It's like kind of impressive. Like I use ZBrush a lot and you know, Photoshop, and I used Maya a lot in the past, and I've worked in Unity, and I mean, it's partially due to those softwares being more complex that they would crash, but I'm just impressed that Clip Studio is so darn stable, so good job, Clip Studio. Okay. Well, with that, I think I am going to bid you all good night. Thank you so much for joining me and talking to me in the chat. It makes this so much more fun. And like really rewarding and motivating. It like gives me energy. I'm standing here at the end of a day where I woke up at 6 and you know, worked an 8-hour day, went to an appointment, you know, helped take care of my little kid. It's a full day, but at the end of this day I'm feeling like super energized by this, and that's thanks to you guys being here and like participating and just like supporting me by joining in. So thank you so much, and I hope you enjoyed the results. I hope you enjoyed looking at Damien's derpy face and the art tips and all that good stuff. I will be preserving this video and uploading it to YouTube, so even when it times out after the 20 days on Twitch, you will still be able to come back and listen to it and watch it again if you want to. Tay says, thanks for the stream, Eve. A very chill energy as always. You are so welcome, and that's, you know, that's what I'm here for. That's what I want to bring, is this very relaxed, chill energy. I think that in my life, I need more chill time, so I just assume everybody could probably use a little bit more, especially in this era that we're living in, a little bit more like, you know, relaxed, just breathe, and like not have anything kind of pressing on you. So I'm really glad that you enjoyed that atmosphere and that I was able to kind of bring that. Alright, you guys, you have a wonderful night. Thanks again, and I will see you next time, I hope. Bye-bye.